Hey guys, this is Monolith Soft-game. I wanted to do a little something special for E3, so without further ado, here's my top 10 checklist for things that would raise or lower my hype for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I strongly hope that we'll get to see the game at this year's E3, but these bullet points will remain true even if we have to wait a little longer. Please note that this video will contain heavy spoilers for all Xeno games, so if you don't want to see any late game cutscenes, better retreat now. Anyway, let's get it started! In my opinion, Xenoblade 2 features the most fun battle system of any JRPG I've played, and I played lots of them. Not only does it turn into a rhythm game of sorts at the high level near the end of the game, it also slowly but noticeably evolves throughout the game, opening up and allowing for new combos and strategies the higher the affinity with your blade companions grows. Usually, JRPGs introduce their battle system and stay the same from start to finish. Not so Xenoblade 2, where combat feels slow at the beginning and enemies appear to be HP sponges, but then later on you're almost killing monsters too quickly for the affinity requirement you're trying to unlock or combo you tried to prepare. That's what I hope for Xenoblade 3 again. Combat that makes you feel like a beginner at the start, but an experienced adventurer near the end. Straight to the chase. It's time to let us control Mecha again. Xenoblade X laid a great foundation, now take it a step further please. Plus we never had them in the more story-driven Xenoblade titles. Sure, there needs to be some sort of limitation not to break the story, but that's okay. Just let me fly and battle them during certain segments, giving me full control. Kingdom Hearts can have the Gummi ship, so Xenoblade can manage a mecha, right? Despite having such a great presentation with masterfully directed cutscenes, there was one aspect there that was just infuriating, especially for how often it would occur. You'd face a boss enemy, defeat it, only to then watch the cutscene that shows your team losing. It's too much of a I want my cake and eat it too choice that just never worked satisfyingly. Either set up boss battles in a way where the boss can lose without the story no longer working, or just, have boss enemies actually die. Xenoblade 2 suffered from this Team Rocket style escaping and reappearing of boss enemies, and I hope it won't repeat itself in Xenoblade 3. In Xenoblade 1, Klaus appears as the proud, ruthless Scourge Sansa, who's ultimately defeated by hero Schuld. In Xenoblade 2, Klaus is the tired, benevolent architect of the world of Allrest, ready to accept his own end. But there's no indication left at the end of Xenoblade 2 that Klaus is still alive at the end of either game. There's plenty of Xeno lore that would allow for it to be the case. Personally, I'd love if Xenoblade 3 was led by a character that lived through being a god, acquired a wisdom of sorts, and now sets out on an unimaginably epic adventure that explores the confines of existence itself. And that's where I'll stop, or else I'm gonna keep rambling for hours. We already had two games that followed this formula, and it made sense for these two, as they took place in parallel. I hope Takahashi Tetsuya won't repeat it a third time though, where we spend 60 hours exploring a fantasy world, only to find out that, gasp, is actually science fiction and connected to Xenoblade 1 and 2. Sure, execution matters, but it'd be seriously lame at first glance. I truly hope that Xenoblade 3 doesn't beat around the bush and starts with an opening cutscene that tells the player about Bionis, Mechonis and Allrest and takes the plot from there. I'm not advocating a total crossover where a portal connects both worlds or such, but the game's story is part of one unified story and I want to see that story be continued. Worse even than another late game twist would be the lack of a connection to previous Xenoblade games at all. I know that some fans would be okay with just another new fantasy world, but part of what makes a Xeno game so appealing to me is the overarching story. Yes, I'm one of the annoying people that loves to debate about the Zelda timeline when I grew up. Discussing when certain entries of the Legend of Zelda series took place was one of my favorite thought exercises. I still remember how disappointed I was when Skyward Sword turned out to be a prequel, when I had been so excited to find out where Aonuma would take the story from either the Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, both at the front of each timelines. Oh well. That's why I'd be disappointed if Xenoblade 3 gave up on any established connection and was just a great self-contained game. Even if Klaus doesn't end up being the protagonist, I strongly wish for an adult hero in this game, at least 30 years old, preferably even 40 plus. It's just so rare to have older protagonists in JRPGs, but there's so much you can do with it. Plus, an adult hero doesn't have to be boring. Zeke from Xenoblade 2 is almost 30, but my favorite character in the entire game. There's always room for 1 to 2 younger party members, but please give me some adult heroes this time. This is basically the reverse of the previous high point. I'm neutral towards 18 to 20-year-old heroes, but it'd be nice not to have another child hero. Rex was fine for one game and I like him, but please not in multiple Xenogames. I keep looking at the cast of characters in games like the upcoming Tales of Arise or Scarlet Nexus and can't help but feel that everyone looks like children doing some cosplay. Please don't be another teenage hero. It puts so many limits onto the story. When Xenoblade 2 was first revealed at the Switch reveal event, I was sure players would be able to use Rex's hookshot for scaling mountain walls, allowing to freely climb anything. It's such a bummer not being able to fully explore the gorgeous environments of Monolith Soft-game. Even Xenoblade X would have benefited if flying inside a mecha hadn't been the only option of vertical traversal. Considering Monolith Soft helped immensely with Breath of the Wild, I hope they took home some of the development experience to their own projects. Takahashi Tetsuya intentionally wanted Xenoblade 2 to feature a shonen-like story and succeeded masterfully at doing so. I'd be fine with more of the same, but please don't go any further in the direction of a happy, upbeat story. I love the Xenogames for their philosophical ideas. If that turned into some lighthearted, let's go on adventure type story, I'd be seriously bummed out, but I'm confident that wouldn't ever happen. Right? Every Xenoblade game has had its own art style when it comes to character designs. Xenoblade 1 went for a slightly more realistic direction, Xenoblade 2 went full Moe, and Xenoblade X tried to go for classic Xenogears, but fell short. I'd love to see a fully realized Xenogears-like art style. Anime designs these days all tend to follow a certain generic style, when in the past there'd be so many fantastic, varied art styles. Just compare Akira to Mononoke, to A Vision of Escaflowne, to Neon Genesis Evangelion. All such distinctive looks, all looking so great. And Xenogears 2 features a very distinctive art style that lends itself well to a serious story. While I'm fine with most art styles, I have to admit that when Xenoblade 2 was first revealed, I was disappointed over the more mainstream character designs. You know, those typical super big eyes, no nose except for a tiny dot in the center of the face designs that make up like 90% of all anime and JRPGs these days. It's by no means a deal breaker, but as someone who follows the newly airing anime each season, I'm a bit tired of these generic Moe blob designs. Speaking of a serious story in the last high point, I'd be thrilled if Xenoblade 3 featured a darker story that explores all sorts of horrible, uncomfortable themes. No, I don't need that everything needs to be shown in detail, but even just hints or dialogue about tragic fates and crimes would be enough to make for a truly oppressive, sinister atmosphere. I vividly remember 3 scenes from Xenogears that really made the game all the more special. First, a cutscene that showed what Ellie had done, realistic blood splatters and dead people all over the place. Secondly, when you're on Solaris and find out about a Soylent Green plant. And lastly, when the heroes Faye and Ellie spend a night together, without any fanfare, just 2 people who love each other having sex. That's unimaginable in JRPGs nowadays, isn't it? All of these mature themes made Xenogears the special game it is. I don't like prequels. The fault of all prequels is that you already know what's going to happen. Tell me the details in text form, no need to build an entire big video game project around a story that already happened. Yes, I'm one of the crazies who likes Xenoblade X character designs. In my opinion, they're closest to Xenogears. However, they had one major shortcoming: stiff facial animations. The characters' expressions were just non-existent. While Xenoblade 2 is an enormous improvement, I hope for Monolith Soft to take that area even further and give us facial animations even outside of cutscenes that rival a well-animated anime. I don't need 4K, 60 FPS or any of that, but animations are important. They are what makes a character come to life. I would absolutely hate anything that ever so slightly hinted at anything that boils down to Takahashi Tetsuya needing to say, "Nintendo didn't allow us to do that." By that interview with the dark erotic game quote is fake apparently, there's no denying that it'd probably be more difficult to convince Nintendo in this day and age to greenlight the portrayal of some of the scenes in games such as Xenogears. Let's just hope that this never materializes as a pressing issue. If I had to summarize all of the Xeno games in one word, it'd be ambition. Every single Xeno title strives for so much more than what contemporary games go for. It would be awesome if Monolith Soft surprised me once again with something that nobody could truly expect from the game, such as incorporating meaningful player choices in a JRPG. I wouldn't expect these choices to alter the overall course of the plot, but depending on what you decide to do, you'd visit different places, different party members would live or die, and you would receive more or less intel on certain characters' history. Considering how New Game Plus is a standard feature in both Xenoblade 1 and 2, offering players some more generous reason to replay the game would be fantastic. There's various reasons for why I'd prefer the localization of all future Monolith Soft games to be done by Nintendo of Europe rather than Nintendo of America's Treehouse, but there's two I care about most. For one, Treehouse enforces a rather Puritan ideology, causing things like the removal of Xenoblade X-Expressive, which removed the option for female fans to create a more immersive avatar. For fear some people would create a big-boobed or small-boobed character, which would have ended the world apparently. Then there's questionable alterations to other games, such as Fire Emblem Fates and of course the infamous Tokyo Mirage Sessions localization. The other reason I'd like to have Nintendo of Europe do the localization again is because I truly admire the British voice acting in Xenoblade 1 and 2. I won't ever get tired of saying it, and I'll say it again here. Nier's voice actress deserves a voice acting Oscar. But so does Mello's voice actor, and that is just the two peak performances. There's so much more. I usually play JRPGs with Japanese voice acting, but for Xenoblade, I make sure to go for the English voice track.
There was only one driver for me. All in all, it wasn't so bad.
Xenosaga fans know what that means. If you want to find out, look it up yourself, because it's too complex a topic to quickly explain. The gist of it is, it'd be a place that is, most likely, very important to the lore of all the Xeno games, but players never got to see what it's like there. Visiting this place would have huge implications for the overall story and would at long last advance the overarching story beyond just marveling at the sight of the conduit, or otherwise known as the Zohar. It would be a daring task to visualize this place for gaming purposes, but if done well, it might end up the most alien, bizarre and awe-inspiring area ever visited in a video game. And one of the most scary, deadly ones too. That's the checklist, everyone. I hope you had some fun listening to my thought about what would strengthen or lessen my hype for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. As mentioned in the beginning, feel free to share your own checklist in the comments. All that's left to be said is, have a fun E3 and see you next time, whenever that will be. Bye bye!